Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today, concluding the week. Maybe Shabbos is the end of the week, but Friday is the end of the week for my Daf Yom Yishir. I give 2 shirim on Sunday. Um, Today's Daf is Ayin Beis 72 in Kesubos. Interesting Daf today. We'll start talking about Das Moshe and Das Yehudis. Two grounds that you can divorce your wife without giving her a ksuba. So if you're in a bad marriage, you don't want to pay the ksuba. Just look out for Das Moshe, Das Yehudis, Machmir. We'll talk about what those things are. Let's get into the bottom of Ayin Aleph and Beis. Hamader is Ishto, the last line. If you take a nether against your wife, she shouldn't go to weddings. She shouldn't go to Menachem Avel, to a mourner's house. Whereas the Bishlama, the base on Mishnah, it makes sense not to go to weddings. Top of Ayin Beis and Aleph, Ika Noel B'Fanel. You're taking away her joy in life, right? Part of Ksuva, Sipul Kaichi, you have to give her joy. She has to go to weddings. Ela Beis HaEvel, my Noel B'Fanel Ika. Who wants to go to a mourner's house? It's not fun to go to a mourner's house. People do it. They feel a responsibility to. Tana Lamachar Himesa, the Gemara explains, the Bryce says, tomorrow she might die. Ain't called Birya Sofna. No one's gonna eulogize her. Vika da Amri ain't called Birya Sofna. Alternatively, no one's gonna bury her. She does it as a chesed to other people because she wants Gemilas chesed. People are to pay her back. Tanya Hayir Emer Omer, Ma'yichsev Tov Lechas Albeis Ha'Ivel Melechas Albeis Hamishta. It's better to go to a mourner's house, to go to a wedding. B'asher Sof Kol Adam V'Chayitin Et Libo, because that's the end of people, and a living person will place importance upon this in his heart. What does that mean? Dvarim Shalmisa. He should pay attention to things regarding his own personal demise. The Safed Yisavdune, if he eulogizes people, they'll eulogize him. The Kavar Yikbarune, if he helps bury other people, they'll bury him. The Yadal Yidlune, people who raise their voice and make a big deal out of people dying, put those posters up here in Israel, they'll do it for him. The Lava Yilavune, if he escorts people to their grave, they'll escort him. The Tawini Danune, he'll carry other people's coffin, or in Israel there's no coffin, the dead person themselves. Other people will do it likewise for him. It doesn't say this by going to a wedding. People think, this is what I always used to think when I was making friends. I'm like, yeah, I want to make friends with this guy because he's going to come to my son's bris, he's going to come to my son's bar mitzvah and my kids' weddings, The word doesn't say that. The word says it's important people should have people eulogize them. You don't go to other people's simcha, so they should come to your simcha. If people knew that, they wouldn't invite half the people. He says, "My davar acher." You might have told me to davar acher Rasha. He says, "I don't want to go to a wedding because there's something bad over there." He's allowed to say that. My davar acher. What is this bad thing? People, they're parrots. Parrots means they have no boundaries, no guidelines. They flirt with her. Might take her away. Only if these prutzim are people that are established there. He knows they're there. If he's not sure they're there, he can't assume that they're there and prevent her from going to the wedding. If he tells her a neder, you have to say something. Say what the husband wants you to say, right? It's on baila, right? The best type of woman, a wife, shows what her husband wants. Let her do it. Shall call him things which are embarrassing to talk about. He tells her certain private things, maybe related to the bedroom, or maybe embarrassing things about a medical condition in the family. She doesn't have to say that. Should fill up and empty the garbage. Do it. The Gemara seems to assume we're talking about taking out the garbage. It's talking about that when they're together sexually, so she should, when the semen goes into her, she should try to exude it, to take it out, to fall over, or to thrash her thighs. I think the article says, in order that the semen should come out, she shouldn't become pregnant. Now the question is over here, what's the problem, right? A woman, there's no problem. If you assume there's a problem with spilling seed, it's not for women. And secondly, she's not mitzvah in purity of Arabia, so she has no problem getting rid of it. This is indeed a difficult question. I don't know the answer to this question. Some say this is a proof that a woman can't be ma'abizera, she can't destroy semen. Some say even though she has no mitzvah of puravu. The Gemara says many times if she makes a taina, she says, I want someone to help me, a child, to help me in my old age, essentially how to do it. I don't have the right answer over here right now. But the right says a different shot. He wants her to fill up 10 jugs of water and throw it in the garbage. The first reason makes sense. Maybe there's something halakhically wrong with this. So he has to divorce her and give her a ksuba. According to the Brisa, she should listen to her husband. He said, even if he says something stupid, he's a husband. Listen to your husband. It's a good lesson for wives out there. You want to be a good wife. Your husband says even if it doesn't make sense to you, you should listen to him because you should listen to what your husband says. It makes you a good wife. So let her do it. So I said, this scenario is kashota. If she does something stupid like this, she's taking jugs of water and throwing them in the garbage. She looks like a shota, and the husband doesn't have a right to make her look like an imbecile, someone who's not mentally competent. Amar Rav Kahana, Mother Tishal Shel Tishal V'Shel Tashil. She shouldn't borrow things from our neighbors. She shouldn't lend out. Nafav Vikvara. These are different types of sieves. A sieve that has a thicker, a coarser sieve, and a more thin sieve. V'Rechayim V'Tanor. She shouldn't lend out a millstone or an oven. Yosi V'Tein Ksuva. He has to give her Ksuva. Shemesiya Shem Rav Shkunesah. Right, it's very common for neighbors to borrow things from each other, to let people use their ovens. If one person has an oven, the other person doesn't have an oven, or to let them use things like to borrow like a sieve, to filter your grain. There shouldn't be any bugs in there. Now, I think it specifies these things. I don't think neighbors have to be borrowing other things from everybody else. I know there's a couple of neighbors that come in every day. Do you have a half a cup of honey? Do you have a half a cup of milk? Do you have 2 eggs? Literally every day. Now, I live across the street from a supermarket here in Makolet, a grocery store, and the same neighbor keeps on coming every single day and asking for small things. Once in a while it's okay to take a favor, but every single day to go ask for a favor, go to the grocery store and buy milk yourself, buy eggs yourself. I don't agree with that, but certain things are very expensive. Maybe a sieve is expensive, or an oven are expensive. You don't have that. So once in a while, to ask for a favor is normal, but to ask for a favor incessantly, keep on asking for a favor, I think is a big problem. Sometimes I say just don't give them, just tell them you don't have it because they're annoying. So if a woman's not accustomed to to asking for favors or doing favors for other people, you're going to give her a bad name among her neighbors. Some people don't care if they have a bad name among their neighbors. Some people, some of my neighbors, do things completely terribly wrong, and they're really bad neighbors, and they know other people hate them, and they still don't care. If she took another that he shouldn't lend out these things, or that she shouldn't sew clothing or weave clothing for the children, as I mentioned, the woman's obligation to take care of the children, and then he can divorce her without coming because it's very bad for a man to have a bad name among his neighbors. The Gemara says it's important to have a good name among your neighbors. Normal people care about these things. Mishnah says, the following ladies leave the marriage. You're allowed to be megarish them. Maybe there's a mitzvah to megarish them, and do not pay them ksuva. However, das Moshe of Yehudis, a woman who violates das Moshe. The simple explanation of das Moshe: she violates Yisurim Daraisa, and she's machshel her husband. She causes her husband to stumble on Yisurim Daraisa. The Yehudis is not in the same as Daraisa. They're abundant, and they're basically halachas. Some would say it's sneas for a woman, or some would say, I'm going to explain chashivas for a woman. You want it to be chashuv, you want it to be important, and she violates these things. Das Moshe, what's considered das Moshe? Machilaso she'eno ma'user. She gives him to eat things which didn't take up shumas ma'aseh. It's tevel. It's an iser misa to eat it. Mashamash nida. She doesn't tell him that she's a nida, and they have tashmish together, bia together, which is iser kares. Well, it's a kotzel chala. She doesn't take off challah from a dough she makes. She makes challahs for Shabbos. She doesn't take off challah. She's feeding him challah. Challah is also misa b'dei shamayim. And oderes ve'ena mikayemes. She takes in darim and she doesn't fulfill them. Ezu das Yehudis. What's an example? Das Yehudis. Yosef Rosh Harua. She goes out to the marketplace. Rosha Paru, our hair is presumably, everyone would say means uncovered. I have a different explanation in Eno Ben Sion. Literally, the word parua means, like it says by Sota, it says para rosha isha. She has braids in her hair is up, and you let her hair down. Priyas harosh is just straight hair, or growing the hair. That's what it means by mitzora and other things. The tova b'shuk, she's weaving in the marketplace. We'll see in the Gemara what's so bad about this. Umidaberes im kol adam, she flirts with every man. Abashol omer af magala yolda b'fanav, even a woman who curses his children in front of him. Or we talk about omer af kolanis, even a woman who is very noisy. She raises her voice about certain things. She speaks loud enough that in her house, from her house, her neighbors are able to hear her. If she says certain things, the Gemara says, so then you have the right to divorce her and not give her a ksuba. The Gemara says, "Machilaso she'enu musar." She feeds him something which she wasn't mafresh trumas and maishos. What's the case? If he knows that she didn't take off trumas and maishos nifrosh, what right does he have to eat it? He should not eat it. Yada. If he doesn't know, how's he ever going to find out that she didn't take off trumas and maishos? L'sricha the amrle ploni kyo intiginli asakri. She doesn't know to take off trumas and maishos. She went to a Kohen and he took off trumas and maishos. Obviously, he wants to do it. He gets the truma. And then the man went asked him, "Did you take off trumas and maishos?" Eshkach shikra, and he found out that she was lying. So then he has the grounds to divorce her without a ksuba. Mishamashto nida hechidami. What's the case? If he knows she didn't go to the mikvah nifrosh, how could he be with her? If he doesn't know, he should be able to rely on her. How do you know a woman, right? She can count the 7 days of nida, right? We're not talking about shiva nikiyim. That's a chumrah that Klal Yisrael accepted upon themselves. 7 days after she menstruates. 7 days later, she can go to the mikvah. She can count herself. She doesn't have to tell her husband. You trust her. She nemar v'safra Allah. She counts for herself. Shivas yamim la la'atzma. She counts for herself. You don't have to inquire. You trust her. Lo sricha amrle ploni chacham tiar lias adam. No, she offers and she says, I had a suffix. I wasn't sure if I saw dam nida on the 7th day, let's say, and he said it was dam that wasn't dam that considered dam nida. That wasn't the right color. But azal shayle. And I asked the rabbi, I asked the chacham, ishtakach shechra, and he was lying. She was lying about what he said. A different explanation over here is that even though technically, right, you have a right to rely on her, if everyone in the neighborhood knows that she is a nida, for example, she's wearing clothes that she would wear while she's a nida. They used to wear different clothes, which is a nida. Or there's some other, it's established fact in the community that she's a nida now, and you're together with her, so then you don't have the right to rely on her anymore, and therefore, when you find out and everyone tells you, oh, she's a nida, and you were together with her, then you have the right to divorce her because she lied to you. When she takes a neder and she doesn't keep her neder, the Amar Mar, we said it in Mesachas Nedarim, Mesachas Shabbos, but Abu Nedarim Bani Mesim. The sin of nedarim, making a neder and not keeping your neder, your children will die on account of that. Don't give your mouth to lachti, to lessen your flesh. And the pasuk continues, it causes your maaseh adayim to dwindle. What's considered the work of people's hands? Right? It takes work to have the children, to raise the children. For no reason, this pasuk in Yirmiyah, l'shav geses menechem l'shav. What's the word l'shav? Al iskei shav, taking shvuos or nedarim and not keeping them. Tanya hayari meir omer kol yedei beisha shenaderet henekayemes yachzar v'yad yirena. If he knows his wife is taking nedarim and not keeping her nedarim, he should go ahead and for the same type of nether, he should make the nether upon her to ask her whatever she's asking. The Rambam says, "My misakin-law," right? What's the difference if he makes her usher and something, or she makes her usher herself? Eliyachzor v'yakni ten doesn't mean he should take the nether. He should get her upset. They should tidor b'fanav. In order to take the nether in front of him, v'yafer law. Their husband has a right for 24 hours. They made for her nedarim, and therefore one of nedarim. Amrulo, they said to him, "Ein adam darim nakash b'kfifa." It doesn't help the fact that he can possibly annul her nedarim. You can't live with a snake in one small house. It's very hard to live with a woman because there'll be times when she makes a nedarim and you're not around. Tanya Hayori Yehuda Omer, Kol Yidea Beisha She'ena Kotza Lo Chala. He knows his wife doesn't take off chala. Yachzar v'yafrosh acharea. Yehuda says there's a way to fix it. He could just take off chala, any loaf of bread he eats that his wife breaks, he'll just take of his own challah. Amr lo, ein adam dar b'nachas shkifa. Rabbanan said if it doesn't help, right? You can't live with a snake. Even when the snake, right? Even if you can protect yourself, sometimes with a snake, sometimes the snake will come and bite you. The one who says you can protect yourself from uh, from challah, certainly by nadarim you protect yourself. When it comes to the one who said about nadarim about hazim in the mikri ba'achil, even he would agree that when it comes to challah, it's very hard to be careful about it. You're very easily just people sit down to a meal, eat food, and they forget that you have to take off challah. Das Moshe, seemingly there are things which are Isurim Dauraisa. She's feeding you Tevel, she's feeding you Chala. Rosh Paru is an Isser Dauraisa. Why should it be included in Das Yehudis? It should be Das Moshe. The Chsiv of Parah is Rosh Hashanah says by Sota, you uncover her hair. Tana Deri Shmuel, as Harla B'nos Yisrael Shlo Yetzev Pur Rosh. We see from Sota the fact that, right, he makes her disgusting, right, or look disgusting before he feeds her the Mei Mara, the bitter water. So you see that normally their hair should be covered. I'm explaining this according to the simple explanation that I think everyone seemingly accepts. I have a different explanation. Even Ben Sion, maybe shut down the shaitel business. Kind of crazy. A lot of shaitel machar would be very angry if what my thought would actually be promulgated and spread to other people. But I will say my own thought about it because I do think it's the right shot. The Gemara says Doraisa, on top of Ayin Beis on the base. Doraisa Kalasa Shaper Dami. I'm going to explain the simple explanation. Rashi explains to wear a basket over her head. I guess this would also be a lot of women. My mother, she's modern Orthodox, but when she goes to shul on Shabbos, she'll wear a hat to cover her hair. It doesn't fully cover her hair. So it sounds like Kalasa, wear a basket over her head, even though some of the hairs would be exposed, even more than a tefach, would be okay, would not be a violation of Isra Del Raisa. Das Yehudas Afilu Kalasa Nami Yasser. However, to go in a public marketplace, even with a hat on, that Das Yehuda is not the proper way for a Jewish woman to act. So it's Asr. Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Kalasa Ein Ba Mishum Piru Rosh. If she wears a hat, a basket, or a hat on her head, there's no Piru Rosh. Heavy by Rabbi Zeir. Rabbi Zeir said, what are we talking about? Heicha, where? Ilam Bashuk. If she goes to the public marketplace, she goes to the Geula, the Rechov Malchei Yisrael, Das Yehuda see. Right, that's a violation. That's who just said it. If she's going in her backyard, no woman can be so careful. Even in her own backyard, she has to cover her hair. No, to go out of her courtyard to someone else's courtyard, just to go to the next door neighbor in your private street. So there, the Gemara says if she wears a kalasa, if she wears a basket over her head, or she wears a hat, that is okay. That's not a violation das Yehudis. It's only a violation das Yehudis to go out with a hat to the public marketplace. Tova Bashuk, she sews in the marketplace. What's so bad about that? Mara is her osel b'nei adam. She gets so involved in it that she exposes her arms, maybe the lower half of her arm, maybe the higher, the humor, the higher part of her arms above the elbow. And that's a violation of Das Yehudis, not a violation of an Isser Del Raisa, just Das Yehudis, right? The Ramban says Das Yehudis is not necessarily an Isser Del Raisa or Rabban. It's just something that Klal Yisrael minhagim, that Klal Yisrael accepted amongst themselves in sneers. Rav Chisda Amar Avimi b'tova vered keneged panea. Now the article says virad keneged panea. She sews and the sewing goes opposite her panea, or lower her genitals, which is a suggestive thing. She's sewing and the threads go over there. I would say vered means not virad, not that it goes down. Virad, vered. She sews a heart, right, opposite her genitals, in her skirt or something like that, which is also suggestive. She speaks with everybody. Right? She's hanging out with the pool boys, with the young bacharim. She's an older lady. She's married for 40 years. She's a 60-year-old woman. She's sick of her husband. He's an old guy. She wants the younger guys. She flirts with them. At one time, I went in back of Ukva. I saw an Arab woman. She was sewing in the street, and she was sewing in a suggestive manner where the string or the heart or the flower was, the rose was was opposite her genitals. Once I saw her, I broke her spindle shadise. I'm sorry, she broke her spindle and she threw it down on the floor. She wanted to strike up a conversation with him, to flirt with him. Amarle ulam havli pelach. She said, "You man, or give me my spindle back." Amar Ravukva Milsa. Ravukva was very upset with her. He started yelling at her. He was upset. He said something bad about her. My Amarba. What did he say about her? Ravina Amar Tov Bashuk Amarba. She, even though she was not Jewish, but she violated. If it was a Jewish woman, she would be violating Das Yehudis because she was spinning in the shuk. Rabbanan Amri Medaberes Kol Adam Amarba. She was flirting with him. That was the problem. That was what he was upset with. Abashol Omer Af Magalas Yolda fun of. Even a woman who curses his children in front of him. Amar Rav Yehuda Meshmuel Kalas Yolda B'fnei Molidov. I don't know if this is specifically or including this case also, even if she curses the grandchildren in front of his parents. Right? By Yaakov, he said, Ephraim and Menashe were his grandchildren, they'll be like his children. So whether she curses his children or his children in front of his parents, the grandchildren, it's the same thing. Amar Rabba, right? What is exactly does she say? She says that a lion should come and eat the grandfather in front of his son. Even a woman who is very loud. My kolonis, Amar Rav Yehuda Meshmuel b'meshmas kola al iskei tashmish. They get into a fight, the husband and wife, and she starts talking loudly about what they do in the bedroom. Other neighbors hear. Masisa Tana and the Brisa says Meshameshes b'chatzar zu v'nishma kola b'chatzar haras. When they're actually together, she's very loud in the bedroom, and people hear. V'nisnei gabi mumin. Why is this written in our Mishnah? It should say by mumin, right? The next Mishnah is gonna talk about blemishes in a woman. It's not just physical blemishes; it's blemishes in her personality. If she's a very loud woman in the bedroom, that's a mum. Rather, the better answer, the better explanation is the first one. Mishnah says, you get engaged to a woman on condition, and you stipulate that she doesn't have any nedarim. She's not a woman that answers things on herself. It's very hard to live with people that put extra chumras upon themselves. And he gets engaged and he realizes that afterwards she has nedarim. Right? They make kedushin al tanai. The tanai was not fulfilled. So therefore, the kedushin is bata. They were never engaged. Kansa stam. It's malchus in the what this means, but let's say the simple explanation means he marries a woman without stipulations. But and then he finds afterwards she has nedarim. The marriage was effective because he didn't stipulate. However, she can leave the marriage, or he can divorce her without getting a ksuva. Woman, he gets mekudesh to a woman on condition that she doesn't have any blemishes. She has blemishes. Right? However, if he doesn't stipulate anything, he finds mumin he divorces her without getting a ksuva. What type of blemishes are considered blemishes by a woman? Anything that is a blemish by Kohanim can't do avoda, serving the base of Mikdash, they have a mum. So that same thing is a mum by a woman, and therefore, we'll talk more about that. Also, the Gemara in Bechoros talks about, she's missing an arm, she's missing, I don't know, her eyes maybe are different colored, I don't know if that's one of the movement. Certain things which would make a Kohen puzzle for the avoda would make a woman puzzle for marriage, and he can divorce her without getting a ksuba. The Gemara says, Stan, now make gabi kedushin ki agab. Now, why does the Mishnah list both the case of kedushin and kansa, where it's talking about the marriage is effective, and he doesn't have to have a ksuva? It also says the exact same Mishnah. So where it's stan gabi kedushin ki agab. Now, the Mishnah Kesubos is tzrichale. Tana kedushin ata Kesubos. Here we're Mesachas Kesubos, so therefore the Mishnah was stated for the halacha of Kesuba. The second case were kansa stam. So therefore, since we're also talking about that, we also talk about kedushin. Hasam kedushin is really there. In Mesachas kedushin, the first part of the Reisha is what's important. Tana Kesubos ata kedushin. Once we're talking kedushin, we also talk about Kesubos. Amar Yochanan mishum Rav Shimon Yotzadak be'elu nadarim amru shalot. What nadarim we talk in the Mishnah where he stipulates and says, or we'll see in a second, what nadarim is the Mishnah say that you're either mavata the kedushin, or that the marriage you can abrogate the marriage and divorce without a ksuva. She may take neder. I'm not going to eat meat. I'm not going to drink wine. I'm not going to wear colorful clothing, which are important to a woman. It says likewise in a brayso, which nadarim we talking about? Things which cause her pain. She can't eat meat. She can't drink wine. she can't wear colorful clothes. These things cause a woman can't wear colorful clothes. It's painful for her, not so much for the husband, for her. Have you ever a papa? Or a papa asks Ahaya, what is the statement going on? What we define Nadarim, right? Are those three things, right? In Nadarim shal inu nefesh. That's what the Mishnah meant. If it's talking about a Reisha, a case of Kedushin, Kevan Hakapid, he says, stipulates, Al Mekadesh to you, Al Namanasha, there's no Nadarim. I feel Kol Milei Nami. Why only these three Nadarim? Any Nadarim, right? He stipulated. The tonight wasn't fulfilled. The Kedushin Minas Batel. Ella Seifa is calling the case of where he married her without making a stipulation. Rav Ashi Amar, Rashi says, Lo Olam HaReisha, really it's going on the Reisha. Midi the Kaptiba Inshi Havik Peda. Midi Lo Kaptiba Inshi Lo Havik Peda. Even if you stipulate, said I want a Nadarim, if most people aren't bothered by Nadarim, she's a nether, not going to chew gum, it shouldn't bother you, right? Just because you made a stipulation. It has to be a stipulation for something which is significant enough that people wouldn't want to be married to her. And that's what Rashi says. That's the conclusion of today's shiur. Hope you enjoyed. See you in Enoch Ben Sion. We'll talk more about maybe one of the most talked about topics in the frum world, shaitels. Do you need a shaitel? Do you not need a shaitel? What is the exact isser of a woman uncovering her hair? You're not going to want to miss it. Coming up next.